Since 1925, the Santa Ynez Valley News has served the community with stories of triumph, countless Danish Day celebrations, and small-town parades. Its editors have provided a voice to those overseas by publishing war letters when things like email and cell phones did not exist. It's published stories of floods, fires, natural disasters, and the resilience of community members in the Santa Ynez Valley. Today, just weeks before the paper celebrates its 90th anniversary, we're sitting down with former reporters, columnists, owners, and employees of the Santa Ynez Valley News. Good morning.
Good morning.
Ron, I want to go ahead and start with you. You've been working for the paper in some form or another for more than 20 years, starting as a sports reporter and a general assignment reporter in 1994 before you began your own column. Tell me about your first week on the job here.
My first week here was the very first edition of the Santa Ynez Extra Edition, which was a big deal here at the paper. It was Lucinda Johnson's baby, sort of her first opportunity to step out from her mother's shadow. And that was fun. It was there were 15 people working here at the time. We were physically gluing up the paper. We would print out our articles. We would choose our photographs, print up the photographs. There were probably four people in production office there.
To what extent do you view journalism as a tool for community enhancement?
It's a matter of scale. If you're talking about a small community newspaper that is sort of the only public record of what is going on in the community versus just one of many different media sources of information out there, the responsibility is a little greater. Everybody at the paper felt a responsibility of, hey, this is the record of what happens in this community, and we are here to serve the community.
Richard, you were part of a coalition of business owners in 1974 that came in and purchased the paper. Something that these days might be considered a foolhardy venture, purchasing a newspaper. Tell me about what prompted that decision and why you eventually sold about a year later.
Probably what prompted the decision was that my mother used to work for the Santa Ynez Valley News when Walt Hansen owned it, and I was a young boy. This was in the 1940s and very early 50s. And I learned the expression having printer's ink in your blood. So I always had a love for the newspaper. It needed some financial turnaround. I went to work on that. It was a marvelous education for a green eye-shade bookkeeper.
You know, the industry's changed a lot since that time. Obviously, looking around, we have a lot fewer employees now, but from what I understand, this was a pretty bustling newsroom at the time. Tell me a little bit more about what it was like in those days in this newsroom.
Oh, in the newsroom, there was lots of action going on. It was a community center. There were people in and out constantly. And there was always sometimes a little schnapps available. There was always a refrigerator with a little
bottom drawer bottle.
Good beer. There was a place to have safe, heated discussions. It was before the community and to a large degree the state of the country became polarized. So everybody could express opinions and be heard and not criticized. And it was a nice time. And when I came in here, these walls still talk to me.
I'd like to mention one thing about that, because I think that's so key about having that kind of discussion with dissenting viewpoints, because I know that we often had heated discussions between sort of advertising and editorial, deciding how that line is blurred and if there is a responsibility in editorial to the advertisers and things like that. And I thought that was really great, and I felt like a trueness, as you mentioned, was preserved.
Sure, absolutely. Claudia, you've been witness probably the biggest transition of this paper while you've been here, and that's the switch from typewriters and cut and paste dummies over to computer-assisted page layout systems.
Right.
Tell me about the difficulty of that transition.
It was very hard. I mean, I really didn't think we were going to make it. It was a change, and people don't like change, but once you know the change is always good. I mean, it made us have a better product. Very difficult in the beginning, and then we'd have to basically send the actual paper by itself to Santa Maria. The Santa Maria Times used to print our paper. Prior to that, we used to take it in these boxes and to the Lompoc Record. I drove it there many times. Right before 5 o'clock, so they would be printing that paper and then somebody would pick it up. And there was this back room here there was about 10 or 12 people that would come in and insert the inserts individually. Now we have machines that do that.
Oh, the night before it went out, they would be here putting
They'd
all
run
those
around the
inserts.
table doing
Yeah.
it.
So that was a,
You know, some of you had mentioned King Merrill, and he's this legendary figure of this newspaper
Yeah.
here. He was probably one of the longest standing editors from the 50s into the early 70s. Tell me, what kind of an influence did he have on all of you here?
Tremendous,
Yeah.
tremendous. I mean, I came on board when my marriage broke up, and I think he saved my sanity. He gave me I used to go out on photo shoots, and I would take the big camera, the Rolly, with the big flash and the battery pack. You hung around, looked like a briefcase. He said, take the little one, take it. I said, no, I want everybody to know I'm connected to the paper, because then they come to me. I don't have to go introduce myself. And it gave me such a sense of confidence.
confident.
And I lay it all at his feet. He had such faith in me and taught me so much. I think of him always.
Did King ever give you any pointers?
I can't really remember that, but he was always very gracious. And I just loved working with him.
He'd sit me down on Wednesday afternoon after the paper went out, walked me through every change he'd made in everything I did, and eventually just stuck a camera in my hand and said, go for it. And it was wonderful.
How did you file your stories, by the way? Because you didn't never work inside of this newsroom
No,
here.
no.
Were you typewriting your stories, or were they longhand?
I would, gosh, that was so long ago. Yeah, it was before computers. Yeah, I guess I
Yellow
would type
paper.
them and bring them in. Uh-huh.
and then we had a typesetter that would type.
Right.
That would type them in.
Well,
the,
they can probably remember, you can remember more.
yeah, we used to have a typesetter that would come in and just set all the.
Yeah.
It was always on yellow paper. It was typewritten. Sometimes mine would be cut apart so I could put a paragraph that was up there, down there,
Oh,
rather
sure,
and,
yeah.
and scotch taped together. And then King taught me all the proofreading marks so that I could just go ahead and mark up the copy and hand it.
When I switched over from sheep, then I went into I went into going to social events, and then I started meeting all these fascinating people, and then the more people I got acquainted with, they started calling me and saying, hey, could you write about this problem or that problem? So it evolved from just social stuff to what's going on now, what people are worried about, and that was really fun. Doing the concerns of the valley.
But the columns have just been they've been a joy for me, because it's been a way of getting
in
a
touch.
and
Yeah.
getting a big family.
Yeah.
You know, every
It
time
is.
I go someplace, and not every time, but often, people say, "Oh, I feel like I know you,"
Yeah.
and it's so great. I try not to write so much about myself as about other people, but the interaction I have with them, I think,
Yeah.
helps.
I did an article about a teacher who was retiring after teaching at the high school for 36 years. And she started telling me about what she referred to as the ever-expanding table. And it was in the teacher lounge. And it started out with 2 teachers having coffee together and sort of sharing stories. And then it became 3. And at times it would expand up to 13 people. And they all started sharing stories with me for this ever-expanding table. And that was,
wonderful.
that was
Great.
fantastic.
Let's try this. Let's.
Here, do you want me to hold Pat like this?
What if we moved out?
Yeah, let's move out this way.